time to rescue some old minis. So lately I've been getting heavily back into Necromunda. It is my favourite game sort of over the years anyway, but back into it, new campaign, painted up recently some new corridor plastics from the new version, and it got me all nostalgic about the original Necromunda 95, and my very first gang was the Escher. So I started trawling eBay for some Escher metal minis, and the first thing I won was this little collection of Escher Juve that someone had listed. So let's look at the paint jobs to start with. They're not actually that bad. They've got the very spirit of the original kind of Escher, quite vibrant, you know, a little bit of animal skins, lots of different colours on the models, etc. So not actually that badly done. Got the typical big starey eyeballs that everyone falls victim to. This is why I hate painting faces. I fall victim to that myself quite a lot. But actually generally not a bad paint job. Not good enough to keep, and I will be stripping them, which we'll go to shortly. And it looks like these were from a couple of different people. So the place that sold them probably had these from several different people and have combined them into one lot. So what I'm doing now is methylated spirits, dump them in a pot, leave them to soak. It's actually for a couple of days, as you can see in the background there, the plastic corridor that I was building at the time. So left for a couple of days in the fluid just to soak into it, and then an old toothbrush. After they've been in a couple of days, took them out with a pair of tweezers and just a good old scrub, and it starts to really peel that paint off. Now you will find, depending what paint has been used, how long the paint's been on there, has it been varnished, you might have to go in and out of that fluid multiple times. But after multiple times of doing it, here's the model stripped down. Now I've clearly got here lead and white metal minis. A couple of duplicates in there, but you can see in the colour difference in the models. So when Necromunda came out, Games Workshop was still very much using lead minis. Then they changed to white metal halfway through. I remember all the boxes coming out because I worked for Games Workshop shortly after this time, saying, you know, new white metal minis on there. So I've chosen to paint the white metal models. Not that it makes any difference. Lead is perfectly safe to work with as long as you don't go chewing it and eating little bits, but there we go. Now doing the basing. So I'm basing them like my modern Necromunda. So with a green stuff world roller that's been textured to look like kind of metal mesh, kind of in the underhive. That's what I'm doing. Ordinarily, I would do my bases with milliput rather than green stuff. Green stuff's a little bit more expensive. But the night I came to do this, I realised I'd run out of milliput, which is incredibly rare for me. So I thought I'll just use a bit of green stuff. Doesn't matter for this bit, won't be a great deal of cost. Now sticking the models down, because I was getting impatient, I wanted to get them done. Before the base is actually dried, I used a little bit of the green stuff under their feet to actually stick them to the base. It did cause the actual base to be deformed slightly as I pushed them down. So I had to use a bit of a sculpting tool to fix it up, and then also where that deformation had happened, I'd sticking on my basing material. This basing material is a mixture of sand and little bits of model that I've clipped off for it, where we've scraped off a mould line and everything. So it literally is little twirls and curls of spruce. So there we go. Now onto the actual painting. So I've sprayed them black and I've sprayed them lead belcher. I stand by the fact that a lead belcher sort of metallic undercoat is just the best way of painting the vast majority of futuristic models. Occasionally use a retributor armour undercoat, there's going to be a lot of brass being done, but in this case we've gone lead belcher. And you will notice later in the video I don't do anything with the metal areas of the model other than the wash stage, so it really does save some time. Now starting on the leather, we're using this Vallejo red leather across all the chaps and the gloves areas of the model, and we're going to keep this colour scheme quite muted. So Escher are known for being quite vibrant, quite colourful. You'll see later on I'm going to bring in some of those colours, but they're going to be a less sort of vibrant version of the Escher gangers. So when I finally paint the Escher gangers, you'll probably see a little bit more what I mean. I'm also using similar colours to what I used with the corridor last week on some areas. So like the leather and this pale brown here, and that kind of, in my head, stands to reason because the underhive's only going to have access to a certain amount of material, so there's going to be some commonalities between the colours they use. Not totally, and that's how we'll differentiate the gangs, but using some very similar colours. Now this orange ochre onto the little tab art thing here is what I mean about they're going to have the vibe of the full Escher gang, but not in its kind of totality, because this orange, if you've watched my plastic Escher models video, which I did for the new gang, this was how I started the animal skins. And Escher do wear a lot of animal skins, but I'm not going to do that on the Juves. I'm going to use the same colour as though they're using maybe the offcuts of the animal skin, but they've not got full animal skin because they're not really full members of the gang yet. So the idea is they're joining in with some of the colours, but they're not actually being given access to the full kind of clothing, if that makes sense. Now taking a bone white colour onto the t-shirt, so not pure white, but I'm going for a very simple white t-shirt effect, as though these are the new juvie members of the gang, but we're not going pure white because again, underhive, bit dirty, so a bone white kind of makes sense. Now, the yellow is going to be my gang colours that's going to go on their armour, things later on. So you could paint gun casings and things like that with this, but again, I want to introduce a little bit of the gang colour, as though these are the kids that are getting brought into gang life. So onto the knee pad, we're going to put a little bit around sort of the strap and the cloth on their arm. And the reason I think there's these cloths on the Juve's arms is this is that bit of cloth, that bit of material that the older gangers have given them to say, right, you're with us now, come on, join in. And it is a little bit grim when you think about Necromunda in its original thing. These are the youngsters of the house kind of joining in this gang warfare, so kind of fitting in, in a little bit of a grimdark sense. Now onto the skin. I'm going to go 3 different skin colours. Now I'm going charred brown because I'm going to do a very dark skin, which really doesn't show out very well on the camera on here. Now, you will notice a bit of flicking between colours in the background as the lights and things fixed. I literally have ordered myself a brand new light. I've ordered it on Kickstarter. It's just arrived yesterday. I've ordered myself some new mounts and things like that. So hopefully the camera angles and kind of quality of the recording is going to get a little bit better in coming videos. So I've gone charred brown on one. That's all of the skin areas. Then we're going for a flat flesh, which is the skin colour I normally use on some gangers. But if you've watched a lot of my Necromunda, you will notice that Necromunda is where I play a little bit more with skin colours and skin tones. Because the models are a little bit different and you can add that bit of variety. So dwarf skin, going for that. So there's 3 different skin colours I'm experimenting with here. Obviously you could do your entire gang in one skin colour, you could mix it up, you could do other ones. It's not something I'm particularly great at doing. So I try and, if I'm all honest, if I'm doing 40k, I'll stick helmets on Marines where possible so I don't have to bother, but it's going to be a challenge. I'm going to push myself to try and experiment with a bit more skin. Now Escher, obviously vibrant hair colour is one of their things, so going into multiple hair colours. Now I've just picked 3, obviously 3 different models, so 3 different hair colours into the flat red on here. So this is any red that I've used previously, so I haven't put any new paints for this. This is colours I've already kind of got. So into the red, and again, whenever you're painting any of the colours that isn't anything to do with damaged armour, be really careful to cover up all the metallic. Really vibrant electric blue onto the hair of the Juve with the stub pistol and pick, and this was possibly always my favourite model. I don't know why. I just like the juxtaposition of the size of the pistol that she's holding. It's like almost the size of her torso, showing the kind of insanity of 40k and their kind of scaling things back in the day. So it's quite interesting. And then into a scorpion green onto the hair of the 3rd Juve with the rather large auto pistol that would probably knock her over if she kind of fired it. So really going into the different hair colours, again being very careful not to hit any other areas. I do paint off a wet palette, so if I do happen to drop some of this green onto some skin, quick wet brush, get it off, the other paints on the wet palette, just kind of paint it over. And then into the eyes. You'll see here I've used a very small brush to dot a couple of the bone white areas into the teeth areas and into the eyeballs, and then later on when I go into the black I'll put a very, very small amount of black paint in the middle of the eyeball. A little bit of the red that was used for a hair just on the bottom and top lips, and I do exactly the same as this onto the others. Again, I'm not a face painting expert, and the other thing is trying to get the filming on the equipment I'm using into the face to show the detail. This was the best footage I actually had, and it's not that good. So I'm going to try and get better at that and push my painting skills forward, whilst also trying to put the video kind of skills forward as well. Now with the black skin, it was very flat. So what I've done is I've just mixed a little bit of the charred brown with a little bit of the dwarf's flesh, just to put kind of a highlight layer onto some of the raised areas and add a little bit of contrast, because I'm not confident the wash stage would have actually done that for me. So just something a little bit different when painting darker skin. It's going to be some experiments I'm going to do later. Now onto the bad and black, you'll see I've done it on the edges of the base, but also onto some gun grips and things like that. Now you could do this in vibrant colours, but again, like I said, I'm trying to keep these Juves looking like they've basically come off the street. They've been given some little bits of old gang equipment, they've been given some little bit of colours to tie them in, but they're not full-fledged members of the gang. Doing the base, you'll see those little bits of sprue there from that sprue mix I had, so it's like a sand and bits of sprue mix, and then just painting the sand itself in brown to just look at the dirt of the underhive, and hopefully you'll see some of the details on the base there, how it really represents kind of mesh and metal. Sepia game wash, the Vallejo sepia wash, really, really nice dirty wash. It's going to bring all these colours down. If you've watched my channel before, you'll know this is the wash that I absolutely love. It really dirties everything up, pulls the colours kind of together, drops a lot of interesting shading onto the model, but you do need to do a bit of work on it afterwards because it does dirty it down quite heavily. So this is after it's been dirtied down. You'll notice the metal now looks like a really nice dirty rusty metal effect, plenty of shading, and we do nothing else on the metal, and that's why I love Lead Belcher undercoat with the Vallejo sepia wash on top. What I'm taking now is every colour we've already used. So the colours aren't at the top left of the screen anymore because I'm just going back through the same colours onto the same areas of the model that we've already used. But what we're doing now is we're doing some edge highlighting. So going through each one on the wet palette, because it is on there, it's still perfectly usable, with a tiny brush and just putting some very, very light details onto the raised areas. So it could be the pocket folds, it could be the folds in the clothing, the tabard, etc. And just really putting some extra little bit of detail to bring the colour back up. And I think it's a great way of painting because it keeps the amount of paint you used really, really down. Because if you were doing a sort of Games Workshop style, you'd be doing a base layer, you'd then be doing a highlight layer, and it's all different colours. Whereas this way, one wash brings all the colour tones back down, and you use the same paints to bring the colour tones back up, and it gives you multiple tones on the model from it, because obviously the wash will dry in certain thicknesses, so it might even have multiple colours, or appear to have multiple colours, even after the wash stays. Now I do a little bit more in the t-shirt. I'm not filling in every gap, but I'm kind of going over, leaving the wash in the gaps and cracks, so it's not filling it in. And sorry, terrible footage of doing the t-shirts there. And then it's the yellow, little bit of detail you can see here with the straps round the arms. So they're coming together now. You know, they are. This is not a clean, pristine paint scheme. This is a dirty underhive, looking like we've been, you know, in the war zone, or even not in the war zone yet. We've just been living in a dirty environment for all of our lives. So we're not pristine and clean. And those white t-shirts, as I said, this is not a white. This is bone white. So it. A little bit grubby, a little bit mucky. The only thing that's quite vibrant and kept more vibrant is the hair, because that's where they're putting their effort, and that's the kind of scheme I'm going for. The same when you get to the flesh, it's the same principle, putting this colour back onto the raised areas. Now, in the case of the dark skin, the wash is kind of the same tone as the actual skin, so it hasn't done the same effect as it has on the pale skin. So really, I do need to experiment a little bit more. I still like how it looks, and it does look very good, especially after the varnish layer later on. Onto the pale skin, it's a little bit easier because that wash has darkened down the recesses, so it's easier for you to know where to put the light skin colour back on, because you know that wash really highlights. You've got to work a little bit harder on the dark skin, and that's something to bear in mind if you're going to do that. So here's the finished models. I have varnished them, so they've had that layer of varnish, a nice little bit of protection there, and I'm pleased with how these have turned out. I think these are a nice basic scheme, kind of reflective of the original 95 Necromunda, how I used to paint them, with some modern touches and some slightly different thoughts. So when I start doing the rest of the gang, and you can see they're on the table there in the background, what I've had delivered, I'm going to start adding in some bit more vibrancy, pulling in some of those like Escher animal pelts, doing a few different things that will enhance this scheme. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, stick around the channel, like, comment, subscribe. Plenty more Necromunda 95 and old minis to come, and hopefully I will see you on another video.